So look, my name is Matthew Morrison. I'm from Gravis Planning, and welcome to the webinar this evening. We're here to discuss our proposal for a new bridge access to replace an existing user work crossing on lands to the south of Belfast Road, Muckamore. So just as I was saying, maybe just, I think most people heard me, but some have just joined there. Your camera and microphone functions are switched off and will remain off. And to the right of your screen, there's a question and answer function. This will allow you to submit questions throughout the presentation. I would ask that you submit questions to all of us, all panelists, as opposed to just one of us, and then I will allocate questions to the relevant person at the question and answer session. Please note that by submitting a question, you are consenting to it being read out. If you do not want your question read out, then just put it in the chat box. It will come to us privately, and we can deal with it confidentially and email you afterwards. This webinar is also being recorded, and by joining, you're consenting to that as well. The full recording of the webinar will be available to anyone who missed it on the Gravis Planning website and on the TransLink website. And we will also email everyone who joined with a link to that. So joining me this evening on the webinar, I have Hannah Lewis, who's a project manager on this from TransLink, and I have Martin Quigg from AME Consulting. They'll take part in the presentation and available for questions and answers at the end of the session. Just to note before I hand over to Martin that this is a major planning application, so we're currently carrying out the 12-week pre-application community consultation before submitting a planning application to the Antrim and Newton Borough Council. The consultation process will continue online for the next week, and after that we will collate all feedback, which will then be considered and submitted as part of the planning application. Also want to say that in normal circumstances, we would have hosted a public event in the local area where you could call in and speak with us face to face, but due to COVID-19 and the current public health restrictions, we are using digital platforms such as this webinar to help to engage with local residents and interested parties. We're also using other methods. We've a dedicated phone line to speak with residents, and we've been engaging with people via post as well as being out on the ground and speaking to residents regarding the proposals, because conscious not everyone has internet access, and this will continue over the coming weeks as we close out the consultation process. So I suppose I can now just pass on to Martin, who will talk through the project and outline the proposals in more detail. And as I said, if you have any questions or queries throughout, just put it in the Q&A box and we will deal with them at the end. So Martin, if you want to begin, thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Basically, my name's Martin Quigg. I've been working with Amy just shy of 10 years now, and maybe the last 3 or 4 I've been working with Hannah and the guys in TransLink on a variety of design schemes, and one of these we're working on at the moment is the Muckamore crossing that I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to today. So to give you a bit of background, Northern Ireland Railways are embarking on a programme to close user work crossings throughout the network. We actually have 2 of these on the ground at the moment being constructed, one in Dunloy and one in Ballymoney. But the 2 we're looking at for this project are level crossing 14 and 16, and these are 2 railway crossings on the Belfast to Derry Londonderry line in Muckamore. There was a new crossing solution put in place at level crossing 14 in 2007, and since then there have been a number of near miss incidents recorded, off the back of which has kind of stimulated this project. So the objectives of our project is to provide an alternative access solution via a bridge and associated access to allow the closure of both level crossing 14 and 16. And all this must be done whilst maintaining the ongoing safe running of the railway for passengers and staff during construction. So the project location is, let's say, it's in Muckamore, just to the southeast of Antrim. And XL 14 and 16 are 2 crossings on the Belfast to Derry Londonderry line, shown in the image to the right, where XL 14 takes you across the railway to Muckamore View and the housing to the south of that, along with the horse stables and various other bits of farmland. And XL 16, pardon me, is over to the west, and that takes you across to the Northern Ireland Water Works here. This project will provide a bridge, laneway and associated embankments over this line between XL14 and XL16. To give you a bit more information on XL14, XL14 currently serves 4 residential properties, horse stables, a commercial yard, and just under 20 acres of farmland. XL14 is a bit of a unique crossing to the network in that it provides warning of the train via a level crossing predictor and miniature stoplights. So you can see the 2 photos below there, a photo basically either side of the crossing. And you've also got user work barriers that combine with these lights and the crossing predictor. And as I said earlier, there have been numerous near-miss incidents at this crossing over the years. Basically, the issue is that albeit it goes red, the traffic lights go red when there's a train approaching, but there still is the possibility that you could use the barrier to cross despite this red light showing. So there is an obvious safety concern there, especially as you can imagine for people that aren't familiar with the crossing, be it visitors to the houses or delivery drivers, that sort of thing. XL16's a bit different in that it's kind of a more private access, and that it's mostly to serve the Northern Ireland Waterworks to the south of the Belfast Road, and also to provide access for Northern Ireland Railway staff to access the line. The crossing is locked off by the access gates you can see in the image there to the left. Currently, if you want to cross the railway there to access the Northern Ireland Waterworks, you have to use the fixed telephone, which you can see to the left. So, for example, if there's a train coming within the next 5 to 10 minutes of the user ringing up, they'll be told that they have to wait until that train passes before they're allowed to cross. So it can be a delay to those looking to access the Northern Ireland Waterworks. So then our proposals is to provide an alternative access over the railway line by construction of a new bridge, which you can see in this location here, laneway and embankments, which is towards the east of the site, closer to the XL14 and Muckamore View, which you can just about make the tail end of, just over there to the right of the image. So basically the idea is that you come off the Belfast Road and then turn up, climbing all the time here before you cross the bridge, and then turn down here. And then at this point, basically where the road splits into 2, where you can go straight on, and that provides access to the residents at Muckamore View. And then you can also turn right here, where you have access to all the individual fields for the farmland. And then the lane continues on up to provide access to Northern Ireland Water to the west. So we've done pulled together some images for the project to try and give you a bit of a feel for what it's going to look like. This is kind of from the east of the bridge looking west up the Belfast Road. Try to give you a bit of a feel here with some arrows. So you've got the heading towards Antrim there, and this lane then takes you up towards XL14. So say you turn off the Belfast Road, turn up, and you're climbing here all the time. Basically, the requirement there is to provide the clearance from the railway line, the safe clearance from the track to the underside of the bridge to allow the railway services to pass without any issues. And as I said, you've split there to 16, and you then Muckamore View towards the east here, or the bottom of the image. And you can see that XL14 will eventually be closed as part of the project, as will XL16. So then just a few more images. So this is you looking east from the kind of start of the lane, bit of a bird's eye view. You can see some details to point out that there's a stop-proof fencing at the top of the embankments on either side, and also VRS barriers provided in front of those where needed. And when I say where needed, that's basically where there's a bit of a drop from the top of the embankment down to the field, so you can actually see where the lane starts to level out over at the top here. The VRS stops because there's no requirement for it at that point. Now's probably a good time also just to mention the bridge there. You can see in the background it's about an 18-meter reinforced concrete bridge with pre-stressed beams. Then again, another bit of a bird's eye image looking west. You kind of get a feel for the overtaken areas here. Essentially, you've overtaken either side of the bridge, where you have a 6-meter wide lane to the north of the railway line, so adjacent to Belfast Road. You have 6 meters here, so you've overtaken there, no problem. The bridge does narrow down to 4 metre width here, so there is no overtaking over the bridge itself. But again, there's an overtaking area, ample overtaking area provided once you turn the corner here. And that is just a thing to highlight there. There is a tree line there at the moment that will have to be partially removed to allow you to see from one side of the bridge to the other. So basically to prevent that situation where you have two cars meeting in the middle of the bridge. So that's why it's nice and open there and you can clearly see across. You'll get a better feel for that when I show you the bit of a fly through we've done. Then I suppose probably a more common view from the user on the Belfast Road heading towards Antrim. You can see here that the large embankment works that are required. These are earthworks embankments with reinforced slopes used at the steepest points, and basically that means everything to the north of the railway line, because it's quite a long narrow field there. You don't have a lot of room to climb up, so these slopes do end up being very steep, and that we've no room to grade them out like we normally would. So for example, that's a 70-degree wall at the very steepest point there, where at that point it's about 4.5 meters from the Belfast Road up to the lane level there. And all these slopes are to be planted with the tussock grass mixture. Tussock grass mixture, pardon me. Just one thing to highlight on that image is where you see a grass bank just in front of the bridge there. That will be a reinforced earth wall. I'll show you a similar example from another project in a couple of slides' time. Then a similar view heading east up the Belfast Road. So you can see this is a view really as you'll be starting to come up the embankments towards the bridge. So you have an approach incline of about 4% there as you climb up towards the bridge, where you have to provide, again, that's dictated by the clearance from the railway to the underside of the bridge. A minimum of 5.3 meters is dictated by railway standards. And that lane, as you can see at the near side there, is 6 meters. And again, as I said earlier, the lane width over the bridge is about 4 meters. So this is the similar structure, albeit in a much more rural environment, where they have provided a reinforced earth wall in front, and that is what be something similar to what we're providing, just right adjacent to the railway line for ours. That then gives me an opportunity to bring up the fly through we have provided for the scheme. So it's about 1.5 minutes long. I'll just let this run through here. So this is you heading east up the Belfast Road out of Antrim. So you can then turn up and you get a feel for how you've got the 4% incline there. You're quite quickly climbing up adjacent to the Belfast Road, and you can see the existing railway line down to your right there, and the barriers and the stockproof fencing, as you can see. So then you cross over the bridge 4 meters wide, basically with 0.5 meter verges either side. At this point is then where you've got the split, where you've got the choice of heading right down towards the fields and the Northern Ireland Waterworks, and this will be the more commonly used path, I suppose, where you are heading towards Muckamore View. And then this is just a bit of a general fly through then. You can see looking westbound here. Yeah, and you've got all the individual access to each of the field and the road all the way up there to the Northern Ireland Waterworks. Yeah, that's basically it for that. And a bit of a program for how things are happening going forward. We have bat surveys happening on an ongoing basis at the moment. They'll be happening right through until October, if my memory serves me correct. That's because there's a number of houses at this point here. They're derelict at the moment for any of you very familiar with the area, so those are to be demolished as part of the scheme. But initial surveys indicate that there are bats there, so we're just trying to get a feel for how many and then what sort of mitigation measures we're going to have to put in place going forward to deal with those as part of the final planning application. As for the full plan application itself, it'll be probably end of summer, start of autumn this year, and we hope for a decision that maybe early 2022, something like that. ourselves will be completing our detailed design towards the end of the year, probably just before Christmas, making a start in that again, aiming to finish up in spring 2022 with a view to achieving funding and then starting construction in the beginning of 2023. Construction, to give you a feel, it's sometimes hard to put a number on these things, but based on similar schemes, is probably to be in and around the area of 9 months. I'd just like to take this opportunity to invite any questions. As Matthew said earlier, I'll be using the Q&A chat just within your windows. And I'll also just, while the questions are coming in, if they are coming in, I'll just pop up the contact details for contacting Gravis.
Not sure where Matthew went there.
I was just going to say, I'm just trying to...
I'm not sure I can see the questions.
I'm even trying to just... Yeah, I'm not sure either. I got a warning message popped up whenever I was sharing my video. I don't know if you've seen that, Anna.
Yes, I did.
I will just stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you've all got a chance to note down those details. If not, you'll have seen it on the on the boards that Gravis have provided, and also on their website. Even if you just type into Google Muckamore Crossing, you'll get everything you need. But I will just stop sharing here just to make sure.
I can see some questions that come in there. I don't know whether to wait for Matthew or not. There's one there about environmental impacts to be considered as part of the planning application. So we probably could answer that. So yeah, the bats were. Oh, here's Matthew now. Maybe just wait for him.
Can you hear us okay, Matthew? Very 2021 problems, these, aren't they? 2020, 2021 problems.
In terms of the environmental impacts to be
Yeah,
considered as part of the planning application. So yeah, we've done initial ecology type appraisals, which that highlights the fact that we needed further bat survey. So that's come from that. We also have a number of other kind of environmental type criteria to fulfill. One being looking at the catchment area of the nearby river. So there has been a bit of environmental type work that's gone on in the background. Is anything further to add on that, Martin?
Yeah. So there was, as Hannah says, there was the initial thoughts about the nearness of how near 6 Mile water is to the scheme. So there's been some follow-up surveys. It's called a stage 2 appropriate assessment, which has been carried out, and it kind of views that the scheme of negligible impact on 6 Mile water. So it's not really an issue, but there are a variety of other things still ongoing. The main one of those is the bats, just due to the quantity of bats that are in those houses. So that is something we as a design team and Translink as a client are actively looking into and trying to see what the best practice is for mitigating, I suppose, those environmental constraints in terms of the bats that are in those houses and providing alternative environments where appropriate. But it absolutely is something we're very aware of and have dealt with in the past for similar schemes in terms of environmental constraints.
Yeah, and there's a question there there's Matthew, just lost connection, trying to reconnect. There's a question there about mitigating against pollution during the construction phase. So again, that'll all be part of the kind of planning process and the requirements of NIEA, and we will have to have a appropriate environmental plan and incorporate into the construction phase at that stage. That
Yeah.
will be considered.
And for all these sort of schemes we deliver for TransLink, there's a bit of there's always an onus for this sort of thing. So basically we always aspire for a whole project award for CEQAL of a minimum of very good. Environmental factors is a key factor in achieving that. So we at design stage will produce a CEQAL plan, or what will have to take place during construction, and then the contractor has to regularly report back with progress on that. So yeah, that with all these transit schemes, that is something that we are always aspiring towards and is necessary to achieve that very good rating.
Hi guys, sorry about that there, just lost connection, so sorry about that. I think the video was just too much. I see there's another question just in here from one of the residents of Muckamore View, just regarding saying about the railway gates, and obviously it's relatively private because of the crossing, and asking, is it possible to retain a gated lane to the dwellings in Muckamore View?
Yeah,
Maybe that's one for you, Hannah.
it's probably something that we can have a look at and talk about the kind of requirements as we move forward into the kind of detailed design stage. Obviously, there's a number of users of the bridge, so there'd have to be some sort of consensus there as to just who takes ownership and liability for that. So that's something that we can maybe look into at the kind of detailed design stage. Just because there's so many users of that area, it might be hard then just to determine where that liability stands or sits.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, look, we'll get in touch with you after this webinar to discuss that with you, because it's something worth working out at this stage while we're consulting with you and preparing for the planning application.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I had thought about for the farm access and the Northern Ireland Water, but I hadn't necessarily considered for the residents. But as you say, Matthew, I think it's probably worth a bit of chat, and we can see if we can work something out on that one.
Yeah, and as I said, Neil, I'll actually be down and hope to get down to Muckamore View over the next week or so. So maybe if we can have a conversation then, I think that would be quite good. Just see another question in here, just regarding the slipway or the road, and why does it not rise westwards towards Antrim, and why does it rise eastwards kind of towards the listed buildings? Just, I think, concerned just from about the listed properties there and the bridge beside them. So Martin, maybe if you could answer that one.
Yeah, I suppose this initial layout has, well, I suppose historically the reason for it has come just from landowner negotiations for the. So there's one family, I suppose, that own the fields basically either side of the Belfast Road, nearly the entirety of the site, other than this area here, which is TransLink owned. This is the option we're planning at this stage, because this is the option we've developed, I suppose, in liaison with the landowner in terms of what's doable and appeasing him to a point where he's content for this to happen in his land. I do appreciate the concern with the large embankments near to the listed buildings. It's just a case of nearly no matter where you put it in the field, it's always going to be adjacent to some houses. To give the background, I suppose long before we ever got to this stage, we did a bit of a comprehensive feasibility study where we looked at could we go under, and there wasn't room to go under, and then we looked at other forms of flyover, and this current layout is is about as good as we can get it in terms of minimising the impact. The driver for the scheme is a safety one, and that this crossing is potentially dangerous at the moment, and that is the motivation for it. And the bridge crossing is the clear winner in terms of totally basically removing the interface from the railway altogether. And as I say, in negotiations with the landowner, this is where it was agreed it would be best placed. That's kind of where we've got to where we are at the moment.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Martin. If anyone else has any other questions, I don't see any more coming in just now, but if anyone else has any more questions, then drop them in and we can deal with them via email afterwards. Martin or Hannah, is there anything else you want to add before we finish it off?
There's just a question there I've just noticed about disruption. How much disruption you anticipate to the Belfast line and local residents? So that's assuming that that's the railway line. We would expect to have very minimal disruption, if nothing at all. We would construct this solely, as trains are running normally, and the bridge beams would hopefully then be lifted in during a nighttime possession. So the disruption to train services would be nothing. In terms of disruption to the local residents, again, just minimal during construction. If we might have to have some sort of traffic management in place, delivering large pieces of equipment or vehicles. But apart from that, the disruption will hopefully be minimal.
Yeah, absolutely. The compound to be located just in this northern field, I would envisage somewhere in this area. So you'll have a bit more site traffic in and out of the compound, but on the whole, most of the works will be confined to the fields themselves.
Okay, great. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Hannah. I think that was useful, and hopefully everyone on the webinar found it informative. I think we'll draw the webinar to a close now, but if anyone has any further questions, you can just get in touch via email at muckamorecrossing@gravisplanning.com, or the email that you signed up with, and we will take everything, all the comments into consideration. I suppose the webinar has been taken forward as the pre-application consultation, and there'll be a further round of consultation with the council for all local residents whenever this has been submitted to Newton Abbey Borough Council. And I guess if there's anything else, you can get in touch with us, the email or the phone number. Just thanks to Martin and Hannah for answering the questions and for the presentation, and thanks everyone for taking the time to come to this webinar this evening. Thanks very much, and we'll speak to everyone soon. We'll get in touch with a few people who have dropped us some private confidential questions. I will get in touch with you over the next week or so. So thanks very much again, and thanks for coming. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thanks,
Cheers.
Matthew.